Good afternoon, ladies and gents, and hopefully there will be some ladies attending this webinar. It's always great to have a female on board because, in my opinion, as you can see, it's a new era in welding training. And as a norm, ladies actually make much better welders than men, although a couple of men will most probably hate me for saying this. Let me introduce myself. My name is Etienne Nel. I'm the Business Development Manager at the Southern African Institute of Welding. And one of my tasks is to promote new technology, especially in welder training. So what we need, or what I'm going to discuss today with you, is what we have introduced worldwide, basically, and that is all in line with the fourth industrial revolution, is where we're going to look at virtual welding as well as augmented virtual welding. Now, this has all come about, as I say, because of the fourth industrial revolution, where people are nowadays looking at more sophisticated and more technology advanced methods of training to become welders. Now, with the lockdown currently in place, that has closed a lot of avenues for training. And as you are all aware, the majority, well, all of the training centers are closed. A lot of people would ask the question, can I train at home? And the answer is yes, you can, but it's actually worthless, simply because you are not being measured. So you might be thinking that you're doing the correct thing, which just the opposite is where you're actually teaching you to do the incorrect things. And that is sort of like habit forming. So what we're looking at is with virtual technology, after the lockdown, we can actually fast track welding training. And with this new technology, it'll also lighten your training costs, which I will elaborate on more with some of the upcoming slides. So basically how we plan on doing this, I took the liberty of just including one of the types of equipment that is available today. It is what we call a RealWeld. It's not the only equipment that is currently available to the SIW. We've also got other virtual and augmented welding simulators. Okay, what is available today at the SIW? We are now in the position to offer a new era in welding training. And basically what that boils down to is it is simulated training and live welding technology on one machine, which obviously can improve your training in record time with huge cost savings. Now, what that entails is with this equipment, you can basically practice in a simulated environment, basically sitting in a classroom. And once you've mastered and you achieve a score, and we estimate that score to be above 77%, we can actually use that very same equipment, put some real material in there, we flick a switch to arc on, and you can basically then do a real weld, which is also monitored and recorded by a computer. Whilst you're training on this, there's also an audio coach, which is, it is a little microphone that is fitted into your welding helmet, that whilst you are doing a weld, whether it's a simulated weld or whether it's a real weld, the computer will give you guidance with regards to some of the variables, which includes your speed angles, your aim, your contact tip to work distance, which is one of the most important variables. It'll give you some feedback on your arc length and also the position of your weld. And then, as mentioned before, the system is capable of having what we call the arc off, which now only allows you to do simulated welding, where you can practice, you can troubleshoot, and you can master the welding techniques while reducing program material costs. And I will elaborate on that a little bit more. If you are fine with the arc off mode, where you score an average of 77 and above, the computer will then prompt you to either go for a live weld, or we can actually take you into a welding booth where you can actually do that. The only disadvantage of going into a welding booth immediately is that we cannot actually track your progress and compare that versus the arc off where you did a simulated weld. Okay, so what are the benefits of this audio coaching? As I say, it gives you objective scores on your travel speed, your electrode angle, your contact tip to work distance, your welding position, and also very importantly is kinetics, which tells you where your body or what your body position is in relation to the weld. Because a lot of people think that by welding, if you are in a comfortable position, it's obviously much better to produce a sounder weld than being uncomfortable. So that's one of the variables that is also recorded by this piece of equipment. So with that in mind, you as the student now has the ability to start training with comprehension, and obviously there is a huge reduction in training time. If you look at the live weld analysis, which is, as I said, first of all, it is through audio, and then secondly, it also gets displayed on a screen next to the weld, obviously, which you can't see. But once on completion of the weld, you will be able to go back and you'll be able to see exactly what that entails. And basically what this weld analysis boils down to is it calculates as a percentage how much time you've actually been within tolerance of the 5 different parameters, which I will explain to you all now. It also will give you a percentage time parameter performance with tolerance, and that calculates the percentage of time that you are within the parameters of that tolerance. And then obviously you've got your welder performance versus your tolerance. Now you'll see on the actual display, there's a green section which gives you the allowable tolerance, and preferably whether you're doing a simulated weld or whether you're doing a real weld, what we need for you is to have your black line, which is the second bullet point there, is the actual variance that you are within tolerance. And I will explain that a little bit more with my upcoming slide. So if you look at the picture, if you look at the second column from your left, starting at the bottom, you'll see there that you've got arc, and highlighted is arc on, which now means that this welder was actually doing a live weld using a real power source with consumables and a piece of material. It also at the top, if you go up there, you'll see that this welder was relatively spent a short time in the red area, and the majority of his welds are either the amber or green with a score of 77%. Now, if you move over to the right, I've spoken about the 5 variables that gets monitored by this piece of equipment. So again, if you look at it, starting from the bottom, you've got productivity. And you'll see there that in the dial, this welder actually achieved 100% during welding. Now, with that in mind, move over to your very far right. You'll see the little green line, which is the tolerance that is allowed. And for this, you can clearly see that the black line, the welder have spent 100% of the actual weld within that tolerance that was set, and therefore he scored 100%. If you look at the top one, that is the travel speed. Also very important to a welder, because your travel speed obviously determines your degree of penetration and obviously the amount of weld metal that you are depositing. Now there you can see that although the black line is fairly within tolerance, right in the beginning, he actually went a little bit too fast. And then again, about midway through, he was going fast again. So he hasn't really got a constant weld speed, although he is 97% within the parameter. The one on top of that, your CTWD, which actually means your contact tip to work distance, which we also refer to as your arc voltage. You can see there he had a clear understanding of how far that electrode should be from the workpiece, and actually scored 100% on that variable. The same with the one on top of that is the travel angle. Again, you can see way within tolerance, and he scored a nice 100% there. The one to the very, very top, you can clearly see there that he was running this weld right at the upper limit of what the tolerance actually allows. And in some cases, he actually went way over. Now, why I'm saying this to you is the advantage here is whether you do a simulated weld, this is what you will be able to see on the screen once you've completed the weld. That will then tell you and indicate to you where you should actually try and improve before we flick the switch and we change that to the arc on or to the arc off if you want to do a virtual weld. Is welding child's play? And the answer is absolutely no. It's like riding a bike. You only learn once you start doing. So obviously, by learning to ride your bike, you're going to fall, you're going to injure yourself, you might break a bone, you might break a leg, but you can always get up and just do it all over again until you've mastered the technique. So simply by using this technology, you can save up to 50% in time and money. But on this, just a word of warning, you will definitely in life get somebody that's going to want to become a welder. And with this equipment, we can, or the facilitator or the instructor can determine within a day or so whether you've actually got the ability to become a welder. And on that, you know, the instructor can actually recommend to you after a day or so that it might be better to either go into hairdressing or to become a plumber instead of wasting your time in trying to become a welder. Hey, what is in it for you as the student? As I've said before, it is virtual welder training. So we can have you on a virtual simulator practicing, recording the variables, and also from that work out a detailed and a comprehensive training plan for you. You've got computer-aided comment during your welding. So if we refer back to those 5 variables, those are the most important variables that will determine whether you will become successful in welding. And the other advantage of that is you can always go back, look at the outcomes of your weld that you've deposited, and you can then improve on that without the guidance of an instructor. Our instructors can also, while you're welding, apart from the fact that you've got computer comment, the instructor can always go in and he can also give you comment whilst you are actually performing a simulated or a live weld in addition to what the computer actually tells you. The other advantage, as I said before, once you are comfortable with a simulated weld and you score 77% and above for those 5 variables recorded, you can then have the option on the very same equipment. You flick a switch, you put in a live piece of material, live consumables, and you can actually weld that material. Both virtual and your live welds are computer assessed, and with that, the instructor will have the ability to actually take that information from the computer, put it onto a flash drive, and we can actually go and print you a permanent record that you can keep to improve yourself or also to review at a later stage. The real benefit to you is in normal live welding training, a lot of time goes for sample preparation, where you actually need to exit the welding school and you actually have to go take a piece of steel, grind it, prepare it, clean it, which takes a lot of time as to when you've actually got live arc time. That's the second bullet point. So without doing all the sample preparation, you can actually walk into the classroom and you can start welding almost immediately. Safety is a huge factor. As I've mentioned before, you don't have to grind, which eliminates sparks. You haven't got the fume, which irritates the lungs. You haven't got the problem of material falling down on your shoes. You haven't got the problem of burning. So there is lots of safety advantages by sitting in a classroom and performing a virtual weld. The real benefit also is that permanent audio instructor, that whilst you're welding, it'll tell you either yes, no, correct, incorrect. And that's the way you learn, is by knowing where you're going wrong and by knowing when you are doing things right. The other benefit to you is obviously it will reduce your anxiety. Therefore, it'll improve your confidence because you don't have to be nervous thinking that there's an instructor or a facilitator standing behind you, looking at where you are defaulting and giving you comment on that. Permanent objective assessments. You will permanently know where you've gone wrong and what you have done right. So therefore, that allows you to put more concentration and effort into the wrongs rather than waste time on the variables that you've already mastered. And then obviously, last but not least, is the self-evaluation and correction. So once you've completed, whether it is live or virtual, you go to the screen, you look at where you've gone wrong, and then you can actually take the next weld and improve on the things that you are not doing correctly. I'm going to emphasize once again, it is a very safe training environment with absolutely no environmental concerns. So therefore, we can actually host you in a classroom, comfortable with air conditioning and whatever, so that you can concentrate on the quality of your welds and not worry about any other safety issues that might be detrimental to you as a person. Then we've also got customized lessons with immediate feedback. So you can actually come into the institute, you can say to us, this is what I would really like to achieve in my welding career, whether it is a special welding position, whether it's an exotic material, doesn't really matter, because we've got 47 pre-qualified welding procedures already loaded onto this equipment. We can select anyone that suits your needs, or if you have a specific welding procedure and material, we can actually feed that into the computer, and that's what you can actually practice on. And again, you got a digital report that is available upon request, which you can then always take back to your employer if, for example, you have practiced on an exotic material. Okay, cost comparison. I took the liberty of doing this. Currently, the Institute charges in the region of 6,250 Rand for a week's training. Now, why is this so expensive? It is, first of all, you have to have an instructor in the welding booth basically 8 hours a day. It is the material that you are welding on. Once that material is welded, it has to be cut smaller, and then obviously it'll eventually end up as scrap. You've got the preparation of your samples. There's no time to weld because it's going to take you at least 50% of your day to stand and prepare samples by means of grinding. You've got your welding consumables, which, as we all know today, is very, very expensive. And once you've used the consumable, it's gone. You cannot reuse it. Then there's the big problem with our electricity. So if we go into a load shedding scenario, obviously that is downtime. Preparation of samples for assessments. If you have welded a sample and the instructor thinks that this sample is visually acceptable, we then have to take that sample and actually go and destroy it by means to do the mechanical testing, or we have to subject that piece of sample to radiography. Then it's the assessment and reports. A lot of people don't realize that, but assessment and reports will take up half a day of the instructor's time to actually do the visual inspection, look at the destructive or non-destructive reports, and then issue you with the necessary documentation. And then last but not least, there is downtime due to your instructors being preoccupied. Now, in any normal welding school, the ratio normally is 10 students per one instructor, which obviously tells you that by using this virtual technology with the audio comment that is given to you whilst you're welding, it's actually like having an instructor with you in the booth at all times. So if we look at simulated welds, and obviously on that piece of equipment, you're going to select arc off. There you've got limited instructor time because you can actually do the weld, look at your screen, and if you feel that you are comfortable with that, call on an instructor just to come and verify that he's also happy with your progress. You're not going to use hardly any material because we will only use material once you have mastered the simulated weld. There will be hardly no preparation time, which actually goes hand in hand with the previous bullet point. Maybe, most possibly, you'll only do one live weld in a day. There's hardly any consumables. There's hardly any electricity consumption because this equipment runs off 220 volt. You've got the constant instructor audio feedback, and you've got the computerized objective assessments and reports instead of an instructor or a facilitator running over and giving you a subjective assessment. And then obviously there will be no downtime whilst you're training, because as mentioned before, you can actually, once you've completed the weld, look at the screen and actually assess your own weld, and therefore also enhance your learning. And therefore, we've looked at a cost of around about 3,200 Rand per week, which tells you that there's a 50% saving in this new technology that we are currently offering. Process capabilities with this equipment is we can do manual metal arc welding, or as the Americans refer to it, shielded metal arc welding, or as a lot of other welders would use it, is the old stick welding. Then you've got your metal inert gas, metal active gas, or in short, as we use it, MIG-MAG, or gas metal arc welding, or as a lot of welders would refer to as CO2 welding. And then the last one is we've got flux cord arc welding. Unfortunately, one of the disadvantages of this equipment is that it is not gas tungsten arc compatible, and the only reason for that is because in gas tungsten arc welding, both hands are needed for the weld. Features of this machine: we can actually have you do single pass in all welding positions. You can do multi-pass capability in the welding positions where you look at your fillet welds. It is a 1F through to the 4F welding or the test position. And then on groove welds, you can do the flat, horizontal, and vertical up with all three of those processes mentioned previously. So next bullet point there, fillet and groove welds as per the previous point. The fixtures, you can either weld 152 millimeters of weld, which is required by code, or if you want to simulate a workplace weld, we can actually introduce a fixture which is 457 millimeters long, which obviously gives you a longer weld. And then, as I said, the longer welds replicate more closely the common field conditions that you might, that you will definitely experience at your workplace. The equipment is capable of welding up to 25 millimeter plate, or as the Americans would say, it is 1 inch capable. The only limitation on this, it is not compatible for positional welding or for positional pipe welding. But there again, not to despair, once you have mastered any of the three previous processes on a groove or on a fillet weld, the conversion to pipe welding is extremely, extremely fast. So in conclusion, I would just like to emphasize that you, our student, can now focus you can now focus on you can now focus on improving your welding technique and the variables that produces good quality welds in a safe environment using the latest training technology that is available in welding today. And with that, I would like to thank you for your time, and I am open for any questions should you have any, or otherwise you can visit us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or on our webpage. Or I would also like to personally invite you to contact me via email for personal guidance and advice as to how you should pursue a career in welding. I therefore thank you for your time.
Etienne, can I ask a question?
You're welcome, please.
Okay, so can you practice doing weed?
Yes.
Okay. And then, sorry, carry on.
My apologies for interrupting there. Whilst you're practicing with either the simulation or a live weld, you can use any welding technique. You can either weave the bead or you can string. That is entirely your preference.
Hi, Etienne, can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yes.
It's booked under Clive Naidu from Elgin Engineer in Durban.
Yes, Clive.
It's actually Darby van der Merwe speaking.
Darby, nice hearing your voice again.
Yeah, same here. Thanks very much, Etienne, for that. The problem here at Elgin, we're just asking, I've got two guys on the webinar at the moment. To bring the machine down to Durban, what's the minimum number of guys would the SIW require?
Darby, we've actually looked at that, and I would personally feel that to make it viable for the company, we would need at least 10 to 15 candidates to attend the course. I do, however, Darby, if I may, just jump the gun. I've actually got another webinar which I'll be doing tomorrow, specifically aiming at fabricators and where the advantages and disadvantages would lie for people like yourselves.
Okay, thanks. I'll listen into that one and book now. It's
Wonderful.
much for
Wonderful.
that.
Thank you, Davi.
Thank you.